Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is the inaugural, is that the right word for it? The beginning, the first ACE show ever. So this is a day to celebrate. This is the beginning of what I hope will be many, many more calls very similar to this. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm David Shoup. I am the founder of ACE Your Presentation. And I will introduce my guest that you see, this wonderful person right here, in just a moment. But why are we even having this show in the first place? And so there's a quote that I love to say by one of my mentors. His name is Zig Ziglar. And he said, "You can have everything in life if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. If you can have everything in life you want, if you'll help enough other people get what they want." And that's what this ACE show is about, is really helping others to succeed and thrive both personally and professionally. And so on this show, we're going to showcase experts, or what I like to call aces, in their field. Then we're going to leverage that knowledge to support you all in the ACE community, right? And so the idea is to help you become better at what you do, professionally or personally, and hopefully in both fields. And so I get the pleasure of introducing our first ever guest, Tamar Lyons. So everybody wave at Tamar. Entrepreneur, social media marketing expert, agency owner, host of Unapologetic Confidence podcast. I believe that's the right word. I said it right. Yes. You're currently living the Nomad life out in Mexico right now. And so I'm going to chat. The format of this is we're going to have just a discussion. It's going to be a conversation. And so as we listen to this, just be prepared to get a fresh perspective. Show up with an open mind, a willingness to take action on some ideas that might be shared, and hopefully we can share some things that could be really useful for you. And think about how the ideas and strategies that is going to be shared with you today can be applied to your own business, your own brand, right? As we all are our own brands, and look for ways to improve. And so I'm really excited to have you here, Tamar. Thank you for joining.
Thanks so much for having me, David. I'm really excited to be here.
Likewise, thank you for being the brave first person. And on the side we were chatting, and I hope that we can have you back because there's so many great things that you do. But let's just get started. My first question is, how did you end up in Mexico, right? Because I think you're not from Mexico. So how did you get there? Tell us a little bit about the journey of where you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Canadian living here in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I've been here for the last, I've been in Mexico since pretty much on and off since June. But my journey of how I got here is, when I started my social media marketing agency, I always wanted to be able to, work and travel. And there was always that idea that, when you have a digital business, you can literally be anywhere as long as you have an internet connection and a laptop. And so for me, I was 4 years into my agency, or I'd say 3.5 years into my agency, and I ended up going through a divorce. And at that point, I realized, now there's literally nothing holding me back. Let me go and live that dream. And so I packed up everything, put everything into a storage container, got rid of my apartment, left, and I decided to go to Mexico City at first. Absolutely loved it. Did a little bit more of traveling around, went to Europe for a little bit, and then I decided that I wanted to come back to Mexico because I just loved it so much. It's so warm, such a great place. Literally, Playa del Carmen is paradise, and I wanted to always live on the beach. And so I got here to Playa del Carmen to see if I would like it. I loved it, and I basically have not left for the last 6 months. So
There we go.
I'm leaving in a bit because my visa does expire. I always wanted to be able to live that digital nomad life, and now I'm getting to live it.
Yeah, wonderful. Now I was just actually in Playa del Carmen. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it's honestly, it's literally paradise. Every morning I wake up and I'm like, seasonal depression is canceled.
No more.
Because I have the ocean. I'm staring at it right from my window, and there's an abundance of food, amazingly warm people, and it's just such a wonderful place.
Yeah, it is really good. I imagine you've got a lot of chance to stimulate some creativity with all that beautiful scenery that you have, and that's good. And so how long have you had your agency then for?
So we're coming up on 5 years.
Yeah, nice. Congratulations. That's great.
Thank
So you
you.
had the agency, things happened in your life, changed it, and then you're running that agency still from your computer in Playa del Carmen.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing. I always look back and I reflect and I say, the fact that I built this business. I started off as a freelancer. It was not an agency, the first year and a bit that I started it. And had I not done that, had I not bet on myself, had I not taken the chance to build this, then I don't think I'd even be able to be in the position to have gone through all the transitions that I went through, being as well equipped as I was. So I really always look back at my business and I'm so grateful for it and the way that I set it up, because in hindsight, that's what literally has allowed me to experience a life of freedom where I can live in alignment with the things that I want to do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, there's a lot of people like myself who are not in a position to be able to travel like that, but I can't wait to hear, and as we chat more about how do you utilize your business to help others to thrive who may not be able to live that nomad life. So it's, the stuff you're going to share is absolutely applicable. I know it is, because I've looked at your site, I've looked at everything. Now, we did talk about, I know a while ago we had a conversation, and I do want to touch on this one, because you work obviously really hard and you travel. It seems like you're traveling a lot and you're really busy with your career. And you talked a little bit about resilience, and you talked a little bit about, this is in a previous conversation, so I'd love for you to talk about this, but you talked about the power of ice baths and how that applies to resilience. And maybe just tell me a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about that. And how does that apply and relate to your career?
Totally, absolutely. So one thing that I have noticed, okay, let's take it back a little bit. I work with service-based businesses and entrepreneurs who are all extremely successful, and they really just want a way to amplify their voices on social media. And so I've actually had I guess it's like a little bit of a career hack, is that all my clients are people that I can learn from. And that's how what I attribute a lot of my growth to, is that I learn from the people that I get to work with every single day. And one thing that I saw consistently amongst all my clients was how fast they took action and how fast they bounced back after experiencing a failure. So if we had a launch and it didn't turn out the way that they expected, certain social media content posts or campaigns flopped, or they didn't show up in the way they needed to, or whatever it was, there was no week or month period of sulking in it. It was like, okay, great, what can we look at, what can we optimize, how can we bounce back? And that was a theme that I have been very grateful to have been able to learn so early on, because I truly believe that the number one thing that separates people who do great things and those who don't is resilience and being able to bounce back. And so that has been something that I have been witnessing, but also trying to work on myself. And I talk about this even amongst my team, because we work in such a subjective field, social media and content and creativity, oftentimes, we get feedback from our clients, and it's like, how do we not take that and make it personal? Mm-hmm. And so I'm always trying to instill this value of resilience. And so one way to do that, and that I have found, is to put yourself in situations where you're forced to learn resilience. When CrossFit, for example, is one of those things for me too, doing high intensity exercise. That is I have to push through. I know I can do it even when I feel like I can't. Mm-hmm. And I think a great way of doing it that I have found has been doing ice baths. I do them at least 3 times a week. I'm very spoiled because I'm here I have the beach 7-minute walk away from here, and we actually have ice baths on the beach. And so one of the things that I have found through that is that when you go into the ice, you're so physically stripped of everything that nothing else matters except for your survival. You go into this mode of your ego is gone, and you just have to be telling yourself, I can do it, I can do it. And of course, there's so many physical benefits of, the health benefits that come from it, but not even that, just from the mental standpoint, the stamina and the resilience that you build and the grit just by going in there, getting comfortable by doing something physically uncomfortable, mm-hmm. and then coming out of it and realizing, wow, if I'm capable of this, what more am I capable of? And that first time I ever did an ice bath, that first time I got in there, the first 30 seconds, I literally was telling myself, you are not gonna die, you're not gonna die, even though I felt like I was going to. And then all of a sudden, David Goggins' voice comes into my mind. And I'm like, I'm only 40%. I'm only at 40% of my capacity. And I just knew that I could do it. And ever since that first time, I was like, wow, this is going to be something that I'm going to do all the time, because it just has been so transformative. And yeah, I think that's one of those things. You need to have resilience as an entrepreneur, because there's always going to be things being thrown at you and mm-hmm. things that aren't going to go our way. And the ice baths has been a huge piece in helping me physically build that and see myself build that muscle as I go on.
Yeah, that's great. I remember when I was selling books door to door as a college kid, I did that for 8 summers. That's how I paid for my college. One of the things that was recommended was, in the morning, take a cold shower. Do not turn the heat on, just turn the cold on. And the discipline it takes to do that one, and then the resilience. But it gets easier, right? It gets easier when you put yourself out of your comfort zone, right? The comfort zone, what is comfortable for you, actually your comfort zone gets bigger and bigger, right? And so then you have to push farther out of sight. So what is comfortable for you, it gets bigger and bigger. So by doing these ice baths, right, that resilience, your resilience muscle is getting bigger and stronger and stronger. That's the way I'm looking at it. Same thing with your business, right? I love the idea of the bounce back, because the pivot, I'll talk about the pivot or the adjustment, and just keep moving. And so I love this. This is great. And so, okay, challenges in your life, things that you get into this digital market. How did you get into the digital marketing space in the first place? What was your background? Why does that fire you up?
Totally. So I've always been an entertainer. I love to make people laugh. I love to sing and dance, and I've always wanted to be, on camera, on stage. I wanted to be a newscaster. That was my dream. And my parents were like, nope, you got to go to university and get a real job. There's not, there's no stability in being on television or being an actor or singer. And so I did the next best thing, which is they allowed me, this was okay, to do a broadcasting degree. So I would be able to learn the biz of television, and the production behind television, and that was like the closest thing. So I loved it. It was amazing. I've always been a storyteller. So I went to school for radio and television broadcasting. I learned, how cameras work, how to produce, the business of producing, all those different pieces. And I did a couple classes in social media. And this is when I was in school. I know I'm young, but still TikTok wasn't around when I was in university. And I think on Instagram, it just released the capabilities of putting out videos when I was in university. So Reels were not a thing, but it was the first iteration of video content. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting, I had a class on the business of branding. Sorry, it was something about branding with a professor who actually is now my client, which is really cool, full circle moment. But anyways, that professor had said in class that, if you want to be on TV, make a YouTube channel. There's no reason you have to wait to get an agent or get, somebody to represent you. Just make a YouTube channel and start interviewing people. If you want to have a podcast, go create a podcast. If you want to have your voice heard, go on social media. It's free. And so he really taught the mindset and the business of having a personal brand, even though that wasn't really what the class was about, but it kind of was. That's what I took out of it. Mm-hmm. And so through that, I was like, yes, I'm a storyteller and I have all the capabilities to literally do everything that I want to do for myself. I don't need to rely on somebody else or another company or another business in order to give me that platform, which I think social media has literally done. It has made it available to everybody.
Yep.
And so through that, I ended up interning at one of the big broadcasters in Canada. We have 3. So as I was interning and as I was getting towards graduation, I was realizing, what I wanted to do. I always loved storytelling, and I wanted to work with producers to help with a broadcaster to kind of be that middle person to get shows that producers pitched to the broadcasters greenlit. Now there's about 3 people in Canada that have that job. Because we only have 3 broadcasters, right? And so as I was going, looking for jobs and things like that, I was realizing how small of a market it was and how niche what it was that I wanted to do. And so I started, looking in different areas. I wanted to maybe, thought production would be interesting for me. And I started working in morning and lifestyle documentary. And I loved it because we were working with everyday people. And one of the things that I was finding as I was interviewing people that we would have on the shows or that were, going to be featured as guest experts or whatever it was, a lot of them didn't know how to actually tell their story. And they didn't realize that they were really interesting until after I asked them questions about themselves. And I would see how they would light up. I would see how their mindset would change and how everything about them would change when I asked them the right questions. Mm-hmm. And that's when it dawned on me that I have a gift of getting people to share and show up as their best selves and let them see what they might not be able to see within themselves. And so I was working on a documentary cooking show, which was really cool. And on the side, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be doing, I want to do social media. And so somebody who I used to babysit for her kids when I was in high school, one day posted on Facebook that she was looking for a social media assistant for her business. And so I messaged her. We met up. I told her, here's my hourly rate. She's like, great, let's do it. And she's a client with me till today. And that's kind of how everything started.
Started with one, and now you're off and running. And so, exactly. You've got your own digital marketing business. You've got a podcast. I'd love to talk about the podcast, and then we'll shift, maybe talk a little bit about maybe giving some tips and some ideas for those who are interested in kind of building their own brand.
Totally. Absolutely.
Tell us about Unapologetic podcast. What does it do? What do you focus on? What's the purpose of that podcast?
Yeah, so Unapologetic Confidence actually was born by, it was a creation that I wanted to bring into the world because I've always been that person that has so much to say. I have the gift of gab, and people would always ask me, they're like, I love your content, I love what you're putting out there on social media. Do you have a podcast? And I said, absolutely. And so one of the things that's kind of how I needed to get started, was by everyone just asking for it. And so I started the podcast as a way to literally just share my story and to share my voice. You know, I think it's really interesting to a lot of people being a young entrepreneur, especially being a young entrepreneur going through a divorce and growing up in the age of social media. You know, I love to share publicly. I'm not someone who just shares random things for attention. I share things because I want to support people. And, you know, as I was sharing out loud what I was going through, so many people were coming back to me and saying, you know, I'm going through something similar, or I'm experiencing grief, or I've gone through this type of situation that could, you know, they could relate to what I was going through. And I was like, I need to have a podcast where I can talk about everything that is happening in my life and how that builds my character as a business owner and as an entrepreneur. And so it really is a space for entrepreneurs to come to share, to learn about how to show up authentically. And I always say, especially in social media, is that the number one way that, or not the number one way, yeah, I'd say the number one way to be successful on social media is two things. One is be really good at what it is that you do. And number two is have unapologetic confidence with how you speak about it and how you share. And so that's literally everything we talk about in the podcast. I often will feature guest experts on things about branding and, you know, just different elements of being an entrepreneur, mindset, you know, like important things, business building, all those different skills that somebody would need in order to build a personal brand and a business. But really it comes back to mindset pieces of what goes into having a successful business and building a successful personal brand.
This is good. So let's actually shift, because I think this is good. I'd love to maybe just chat with you about some best practices. Now you've got, what is it, Lyons Digital Marketing? Is that what
Digital marketing.
That's
yes.
right. Yeah, and you've had that for 5 years, and you're seeing a lot of success, and I just love this. And so, what is your approach to, you know, creating high converting content? Because that's one of the most important things. There's like, you know, not only having content, but that converts
Absolutely.
to leads, to likes, to prospects, to customers. Like, do you have any advice when it comes to this?
Absolutely. Okay, there's a few things. What I would say number one is, before you hit post on social media, you need to go through your content and understand what your messaging pillars are. Most people think that content pillars are inspirational and educational and conversion content, and that's just not the case. Those are not content pillars, those are content types. What you need to do is actually go in and first take a step back and look at who your target audience is. Who are the people that you're trying to reach, and how can you align your content to actually speak to them through the way that they experience it? So not using industry jargon, not just kind of throwing around, you know, general pain points, things like that, but really getting clear on what are the symptoms that my target audience faces as a result of having a problem. And I think on social media, this is probably the biggest thing that I see, is you have so much marketing around pain points. So people are saying, oh, you're feeling this way or that way. And it goes over people's heads, because most people, especially people going on social media for entertainment, are not even aware that they have a problem in the first place. But if you talk about the symptoms, then I can read that piece of content and I can actually relate to what's happening. You know, so I think it's always really looking at how you're framing and being really clear on your actual messaging. So what are the pillars that you do in the business? And those pillars should relate to the offerings that you have in your business. So that way you can always direct people and have a call to action. But really, I'd say at the core of it, the reason why people don't know how to create content that converts, or why people often try a lot and it doesn't work, is because they're only talking about problems that people aren't even aware that they have.
So you talk about symptoms. Is there an example that you can share, like some maybe either from your own experience, how you were able to come to this understanding?
Yeah, totally. I have a lot of clients I have a couple of clients who work in the like high-powered female entrepreneur space. And often one of the big pain points is burnout. Mm-hmm. Most people who are experiencing burnout don't realize that they're experiencing burnout until they're already burned out. And so a burnout coach, or somebody who's trying to sell a program to combat burnout, it's not helpful to be talking about, are you burned out? Are you always feeling, you know, this way? Because the person who's burned out doesn't realize that they're there. But if you can align your content to actually to meet them where they're at. So maybe it's, you're working 24/7, and no matter what you do, you don't feel accomplished. you are putting all your time into your business, and you didn't start this business to become, you didn't leave your 9 to 5 to work a 24/7. Things like that, like really finding the actual symptoms of what somebody is going through, rather than just kind of talking about, oh, you're burned out, and then creating content and tips and tricks around how to deal with burnout.
I see
because
that.
the person you're trying to reach doesn't even get that. So that's kind of what I would say as an example.
Yeah, that's a great example. You're really laying out this. They're like, oh, that's me. I'm experiencing that. And then
Exactly.
you don't even need to call burnout. You're calling the symptoms, and then obviously burnout is the main subject. What are the causes? What are the symptoms of burnout? What are the things that show up? Yeah.
And that's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, people understand what they're feeling, and people connect to what they feel. And especially from a sales psychology perspective, when you're creating content, if you can get in the head of the person that you're trying to reach, that is going to be the thing that makes them take action. Because if you don't understand why you need to take action, or if you don't connect and you don't understand why you actually have to take action, then you're just going to keep reading, maybe like it, keep scrolling, things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, really connecting the dots between what is the symptom that they are experiencing, and then an added layer in the next step would be, why do they care? And,
why would they care about that?
What is the cost of not taking action? And so that's an additional layer, which I call agitational content. So really agitating the person, not necessarily in a bad way. It's to give value, but to showcase, here's what you're doing, here's why you are where you are, and here's what you need to do. Here's the cost of not making a change. But not necessarily telling in the content what you have to do. Then you push people to work with you, and then you give them the solution.
Yeah, and yours is typically you bring it out, and then someone reaches out to you, and for like a general consultation to see if it makes sense to work with you, kind of conversation, typically.
Exactly.
So it's just about getting that person interested enough to listen to what you're saying, go, I want to find out more.
And it's yes, 100%, but it's also making sure that you position yourself as a solution. For social media, for example, the number one reason why people come to us is that, they're posting consistently. They have somebody on their team who's doing a lot. They're putting in a lot of volume of content, but at the end of the day, it's not working for them.
Yeah.
So one of my pieces of agitational content is consistency is great, but if you're consistently doing the wrong things, you're wasting your time. So instead of focusing on consistency, focus on consistently doing the right thing, and therefore you need a strategy. If you don't have a strategy, if you don't know what you need to change, if you don't even know where you need to look in order to make a change and do better, then you should probably get on a call with me, because we can help you change that. Something like that. That's the way that I would, it's not written out perfectly, but that's kind of the way that I would think about it and frame and refine from there. And that's why people come to me and say, yes, I align with this. I'm spending so much time doing this. I have a social media manager. What they're doing is not working. Let's, connect and work and see how we can go from there. So that's how I would describe it. And
then the conversation with this person might be different based on what they're looking for. Say, okay, because you brought this up, and that was a question I wanted to ask is, and I'm guilty of this before I started hiring and bringing a team in to support me, of just plastering memes and posts, and it didn't really generate it. It generated likes maybe or some, but it's not really bringing people to go, I want to do what you do, or can you coach me? Can I pay for your service? Can I pay for... So for someone like myself, who is relatively consistent in posting, I have two businesses. I've got my children's book business that I run, The Adventures of Wembley the Pug, and then my coaching consulting business here. Someone like me who's posting, and then, the best response I'll get is, hey, could you tell me a little bit? How are you doing that? That's about it. There's not a lot of, can you coach me, or any of that. People want a lot of free advice too. So how do you, that's maybe a lot of questions right there. Is that stimulating a thought for you?
Absolutely. What I would say, number one, and it's, I work with a lot of coaches, so this is literally like a very good, a good example to be using, because it's so fresh. But what I would say, in that is often there are two pieces that are necessary in a really good, highly converting social strategy. Number one is wanting to make sure that you've got you're getting new eyes on your content every single day. So visibility is super important. So like you're saying, you're getting content that generates likes, and you're getting a lot of people, engagement. That's wonderful. That is great. And that is necessary. The second thing that you need is conversion. So for example, if you get a ton of visibility, there's so many people, and I've had a couple people come to me, with 3 million people in their audience across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and things like that. They're making $0 from their content. And that's because they're really good at leveraging visibility content and creating virality, but they're not good at the second part, which is creating content that converts. And so you need to have both. One aspect is how can I generate more eyes on my content? And the second thing is how can I get those eyes that come to my page and come see my content to see themselves in the content and actually need to take action. So there's a couple of things we need to go through. I haven't had a chance to audit your specific socials, but what I will say is looking at number one, what are the actual calls to action in the posts? So, maybe you're sharing something relevant to your industry, maybe you're sharing your thoughts on, public events or just things like that. And that's all great. Those are pieces of content that can absolutely boost your authority because that's an element that you really want to integrate. How can you leverage your social media platform so that people know you're the expert and know that, when they need what you have to give, you're that go-to person that they have to go to. And so for me, oftentimes, I'm not selling in absolutely every single piece of content, right? Oftentimes, I'm just putting out a piece of content, sharing my thoughts on entrepreneurship or sharing my thoughts on a certain element of social media. Or let's say, when the things were happening with TikTok and the government and the TikTok ban and things like that, just putting my voice out there as an expert authority in that space. So that way, when people see that I'm talking about it, they recognize I'm an authority. She's somebody that I am starting to trust.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of social media. You want to build that know, like, and trust factor.
And not every one of your posts is some sort of call to action. It's just staying out there. And then when do you know, like, now it's time to call to action? Like, when would you know that? Because that's what I'm seeing. It sounds like I want to make sure I'm posting my thoughts and making sure that I am an expert in my field and that I get perceived that way. But then there's going to be a time where I want someone to go, all right, come to the ASU presentation side or the Wembley the Pug side and purchase my book or purchase my product or
Exactly.
sign up for my service. I'm just saying that in general for me, but this applies to anybody.
Absolutely. So I would say I do try to have a call to action in every single post.
Okay.
Whether the call to action is either buy from me, share, or give me your opinion, like comment, something like that. You always want to be generating some kind of engagement. So I'm always telling my audience how I want them to engage with my post. When it is a post that I want to convert, if I want somebody to go look at a post and say, okay, I want you to buy from me, to me, the way that I look at it is I always do it in phases. So the way that I format all my content is basically I look at a month and I separate it into 3 sections by the month. So let's say the first week and a bit is the problem aware phase. So I'm creating content. I'm not necessarily like having a call to action to book or to book a call with me. Oftentimes it does happen. And I think as you go through these phases, it ends up happening. But in the problem aware phase is when I'm just creating content that is talking about the symptoms and making my audience warmed up and aware of the issues that they're having. So for example, I start talking about information or posts about best practices on LinkedIn, how to grow on LinkedIn, or how to create content that converts, things like that. That's all happening in the problem aware phase.
Mm-hmm.
Then after problem aware phase is the second section, which is agitation. I'm making content that is agitational, that is showcasing to my audience what it is the cost of not taking action. So like I said, for example, earlier on, I talked about consistency. You're putting in all your efforts, but it's not bringing you anything. Another type of post that I did recently was you're spending $5,000 a month by doing social media by yourself, by not outsourcing. And then I brought people to the way that I formatted the post was talking about what is the value of your hour. And so that's like, okay, interesting. And that was a super highly converting post, by the way. I reuse it.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody. I reuse it every couple of months. We generate probably about 1 to 3 clients every single time I post about that.
Reuse what works, right?
Absolutely. Because people start recognizing the value of their time. But that's something that people don't necessarily draw that connection to when they're thinking about their social media. So that's the agitational phase, is really showcasing to people the value of not taking action and what can you do to make a change. Then you go from the problem aware to agitation to solution. And in the solution phase, which is the third section, is really positioning yourself as the expert. You've talked about, here they have a problem, here's the cost of not taking action, and here's why I'm the best person to help you through this. And you've established that by going through these 3 phases consistently. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I would say whenever we're working with a content cadence or content strategy, we're always doing it in that order. And then within that framework, you can then create content that is educational, or you can switch it up, whether it's a reel or a LinkedIn post or whatever it is. But really, the format can always shift, but it really is about going through those 3 phases of content.
The PAS approach, PAS. Problem, yes. Right? Well, actually, pause, problem awareness, agitation, and then solution.
Solution.
Love it.
Exactly.
I'm a big fan of acronyms, so I'm just trying to figure how do I recall, how do I remember this point? This is really great. Oh my gosh, this is exactly what I was looking for. And so what you do as far as coaching, this doesn't just apply for like LinkedIn. This is TikTok, this is Instagram, this is Facebook. And then if yes, then is it slightly different for every one of them? I know that we don't, I want, this could go down a whole rabbit hole, but is it slightly different for each one? LinkedIn versus Facebook versus TikTok versus?
Yes. Okay. So it's so funny. I just had a conversation with my client yesterday where I was talking to him about this. So from a strategy standpoint, yes, I do believe that like there are just marketing strategies that do apply across the board. Sales psychology applies across the board, but every single social media platform is different and all your content should be optimized for that platform. So that's not to say that you can't share a Instagram reel on YouTube, but you do need to take into consideration the way that the user actually interacts with the app. So for example, on LinkedIn, there's no section on LinkedIn to search for hashtags, but you'll notice people often will add hashtags to their posts because that's just a very common thing to do on social media. When you post on Instagram and you put in hashtags, Instagram categorizes your post by those hashtags, and that can help you gain more visibility. It's not the be all and end all, but it is an element. And if I, as a user, go onto Instagram and I want to search for, I don't know, best restaurants in Playa del Carmen, I put that in and I can search under, I can literally click hashtags in my search on Instagram, and that's how it categorizes content based on that. If I go to LinkedIn and type in best restaurants of Playa del Carmen, there's no way for me to actually search for hashtags.
Yeah, okay.
So in my opinion, you don't really need hashtags on LinkedIn. In fact, we don't use hashtags on LinkedIn at all.
Okay.
But my point in sharing that is not for, the little LinkedIn hack. It's more about every platform has its best use practices, and therefore the way that you format your content needs to have that in mind. TikTok, for example, yes, you can upload photos, yes, you can upload, short form videos, but Instagram is very, very visual and very aesthetic. TikTok is a lot more rugged and raw and just, sharing your thoughts. And the type of content that might do really well on TikTok is not necessarily going to do well on Instagram. It's not going to do well on YouTube Shorts. There does have to be certain elements of strategies that you are implementing for each piece of content. While the intention can be the same, you do have to shift your content based on the platform, so that way it is native to the platform.
Yep. I feel like there's so much that's come here. There's so much in just this short period of time, like nuggets of gold here. And the biggest thing I would say, if all this, for those of you listening, and you're like, oh, where do I start? There's so much right now. All I would say, and then you can add to this, I imagine, is start somewhere, right? I'm putting a lot for this is on LinkedIn. It's going to be a LinkedIn push. It's going to be big LinkedIn. And then maybe, then I'll add some TikTok, and then I'll add some YouTube, but start somewhere, start consistently, and then learn as you go, right? Adapt, to your point. Be ready for the bounce back when some things don't resonate. And so, any last thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think exactly as you said, like just start somewhere, but don't wait to start. And I think, everyone listening here is somebody who is doing something great in their career, or they're an entrepreneur, or whatever it is that they're doing. Remember your why. Remember why you do what you do. If you love what you do, you want to, and exactly the point of the ACE show too, right? You want to be of service. Always start from there. When you're coming from a place of service and showing up on social media because you have something to share, remember that it doesn't matter whether you get 100 likes or 100,000 likes, or if you get one like. If you can impact one person by sharing your thoughts, sharing your story, sharing what it is that you do, that in of itself is the whole goal. So just keep in mind from a mindset perspective why it is that you do what you do, and understand that even if you impact just one person and it's a small impact, it really is a huge impact.
Yeah, and over time that compounds.
Absolutely.
Just think about if every post that you put impacts one person, and you do a post a day, 365 people were impacted by you, if you just think of it that way. And some of those we're going to want to work with you, or maybe even you're just promoting for your company, right? You're a personal brand within your company. Someone's like, I want to find out. That happened to me all the time. Can you tell me more about your company? So I love this. Thank you so much, Tamar. This is great.
Sure.
I would love, before we wrap, I would love to promote you. Is there any way, if someone wants to reach out to you, are there trainings that you offer, consultations? Like, how would someone reach out to you for support?
Totally. So we work with clients in two ways. We do consulting, and we also do done for you. So if you're someone who, listened to this episode and you're like, this sounds great, but I don't know how to do it, and I don't have the time or capacity, I don't want to do it, I always joke and say we impersonate people for a living, and we literally go and we will run your social media for you. So that comes done for you. Social media management is literally like we'll create the content, write all the copy, and essentially impersonate you and run your social media for you. So that is done for you services. I also offer consulting, which is the second way that we work with clients. And in consulting, that's, one-on-one working with me. And then we offer that in a retainer as well as just, a 1 hour consultation if anyone has any like specific questions that they want to dive into and want to go deeper.
Nice. This is great. So resources, you are a good resource for this. Tell me, who's the next guest on Unapologetic Confidence podcast? Do you have one lined up?
Do I have someone lined up? I did probably about 7 episodes in the last 2 weeks, so I actually had to stop. But I do have one person lined up we're not recording in April because I just needed a little bit of a break because I went too hard in it.
Well, you did a whole bunch in one batch and then you'll post them over. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So the next guest, her name is Ashley Bennington. She is amazing. She is like essentially a really high-powered entrepreneur who built her business primarily through TikTok, and within like 2 years built her business to 7 figures, and talks a lot about agitational content and personal branding as well. So her and I have a lot of overlap, and I'm really excited to have her share on our podcast.
Sounds like you guys are going to have a great conversation. You could be like that Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly movie. You'll be like, did we just become best friends? Yep.
Literally. It's so true.
Well, this has been a blast. Thank you so much. This was our first call ever, right? Oh my gosh, and so great. Thank you so much. Reach out to Tamar if you've got questions. Lyons Digital Marketing. This has been amazing. So stay tuned for the next ACE show coming up soon. And I just hope you guys have learned a lot, picked up some great information, and I hope this helps you to ace your life. We'll see you on the next show.